You are watching the New American Media. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Unhappy Hour. I am your host, Brian Engelman, here on the NewAmericanMedia.com. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday, August the 3rd of 2012. Got Cleveland Browns on the brain. A lot of action going on in Berea. The team has been sold pending league approval, which seems to be merely a formality at this point. So we're going to get into some of the Browns ownership changes and maybe a positional preview or so for today's program. Before we get going, I want to thank our sponsor, 3 Black Cats. Take a look at the website, the number 3blackcats.storeenvy.com. Really cool stuff over there. Earrings, belly dance accessories, homemade herbal products, hidden book boxes. Take a look at the hidden book boxes. You want to support the New American Media, support our sponsors. Go to 3blackcats.storeenvy.com. That's the number 3blackcats.storeenvy.com. This is a continuation of our Strictly Browns segment. This is a new, I don't know if it's a show or a segment yet. We're kind of developing this, but we are joined once again with our good friend Brandon Odell, joining us from the great state of Ohio. Brandon, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Yeah, living the dream. Can't complain. Happy to talk Browns. I mean, you see people with offensive aptitude when they're showing highlights now with Trent Richardson and Brandon Weeden, and Colt McCoy's even looking better. And they're talking about new ownership with a really successful businessman who has already been a partial owner of a very successful franchise in the Steelers with his Jimmy Haslem guy. So, you turn on the news now, you turn on ESPN and NFL Network, and it's a lot of positive Browns coverage. I don't know how to deal with that. It's been so long since there's been positive Browns coverage in my life. Well, how are you feeling about things, Brandon?
I guess the main thing is, are we going to see it on the football field?
Right.
Are any of these changes going to affect the team in a positive way? Everything that has been coming out of Cleveland and has been coming out through the media is basically saying that, for years Randy Lerner, who inherited the team rather than really buying it himself, just his heart was never quite in it.
No, never.
He's selling it to. And I guess you can't fault him for that. He didn't buy the team himself, but this Jimmy Haslem, his heart is in it, and it certainly seems that his heart is in it to win it, so to speak. And we'll just see if it actually ends up meaning any more success on the football field. I mean, that's something that I guess really just remains to be seen.
Yeah, and we posted last week's show, and we got a comment. By the way, if you're listening live, you can send us a tweet at American_media_, and we will get those messages and communicate that to Brandon and include it in the conversation. And if you're watching after the fact on YouTube, please click subscribe. We posted last week's episode, and we split it up, and one of the segments was, could the Browns move to Los Angeles? And someone in the chat room, I won't repeat exactly what they said. They're just basically like, no, you idiot. It's one of the conditions. They're not going to move the team. I'm like, yeah, so as none of this was finalized a week ago, you're expecting me to have the foresight to understand and predict something like that. But I just want to touch on that one last time, because during today's press conference, Jimmy Haslem, he did say that he wants to keep the details of the negotiation and some of the deals finer points private, but he did share one of the 4 points that Mr. Lerner had, and it was that, you're not to sell this team and move it, you're not to move this team out of Cleveland. But at the end of the day, is that like Jerry Maguire saying, my word is strong as oak? and it's a promise that you can't really bank on, or is this written into the deal where they are legally not allowed to move? I don't know the answer to that, Brandon.
Well, everything that I have seen and heard is that there is an actual stipulation built into the contract that there would be legal recourse to be able to be taken if there was any attempt to move the team. And the most glaring thing that people in the local media have been mentioning as well is just the fact that the Cleveland Browns have a lease with the stadium through 2029.
That is true.
So there's also quite a bit of legal recourse that could be taken from that regard as well. And certainly, to Haslem's credit, it seems that he stifled any of those rumors right off the bat during his press conference, and just said that he is 100% committed to building a winner in Cleveland. I thought it was very interesting that he mentioned the fact that he was looking to sit in the stands during the first exhibition game, and kind of trying to get an idea of things from I guess a fan's point of view, and I admire that. I like that because I think that he is an outsider. Let's be honest. He's coming from Knoxville, Tennessee, but I think he is interested in becoming a part of the Cleveland culture, and so we'll see how far that goes.
Yeah, and he was leaning on Mike Holmgren. He kind of referenced how many questions he's been asking Holmgren, in the fact that Holmgren's had a few good drafts over the past couple of years, and he said, coming from the Steelers, that it's of the he said the most important thing, and I'm paraphrasing now. I don't have the quote right in front of me, but I did just watch it, and he said the most important thing that an NFL business, because it is a business, $1 billion business. The most important thing an NFL team can do is draft well in the first round, and it's not enough to get a player that contributes. You need a player that's going to be an all-pro with your first-round picks. You need to hit on those picks. He said nobody's batting 1,000, but you need to hit on those picks if you're going to be successful, because that's what the Steelers have done. They draft well, they build from within, and they don't need to go outside and spend tons of money in free agency because they're building the foundation out of strong stones and cinder blocks. So it's
by and large they keep their own free agents.
You're right. The ones that they want to keep, and they said too that they looked around and they're finding the right character players. And I know people say that all the time, but you really don't want a lot of Braylon Edwards or Kellen Winslow's or disruptions, disruptive forces, Peyton Hillis. You don't want that type of person on your team in the locker room, because it destroys the morale. It gets you infighting with each other, and you can't move forward as an organization when you're fighting each other behind the scenes. It just doesn't really work that way. So I think Jimmy Haslem, he understands that, and it just really seems like he's going to keep Mike Holmgren around. That's my gut instinct, is that I don't think Holmgren's on a fast track out so he can be replaced with Jimmy Haslem's people. Are you getting the same impression?
Well, two things. Number one, I think it would be kind of asinine because regardless, one way or the other, Holmgren has signed a contract, and they're going to have to pay him his money. I think that it would be asinine to not try to find some sort of use for that football intelligence that he brings to the table, and to just completely throw that away while still paying him that money, I think would be unnecessary. But I'll be completely honest with you, the person that concerns me more than either losing Holmgren or even Coach Pat Shurmur, I think would be if something was decided where they decided to go in a different direction with Tom Heckert, because you talked so much about those excellent drafts,
right.
And the main reason that Tom Heckert came to Cleveland was so he could have total authority over being able to run the personnel department. And that Joe Banner, who is a former Eagles president, is supposedly part of the ownership team. A lot of people have heard that name tossed around now. And
by the way, at the press conference, Brandon, he was asked about that, and he kind of, well, I don't want to get into the details of who the ownership group is.
Right.
He kind of absorbed it and said, well, I just don't want to talk about that right now. So he didn't confirm or deny that. But yeah, right. We're all hearing it.
But either way, supposedly Heckert and Banner had there's conflicting reports. Some say that they had a good relationship. Some say it was just so-so. So that'll be interesting to see. Out of any of those three, I think that that Tom Heckert is actually most integral to the Browns' continuing success. I think that ultimately players, I think in rare instances you have these superstar coaches that make their teams to that other level. But at the same time, too, it's all about having dynamic playmakers. It starts with having a dynamic quarterback. We talked a little bit about the quarterbacks last week. It goes along with having a dynamic dynamic key pieces on offense. They found one of those pieces in Trent Richardson. We talked a little bit about his role last week as well, and having dynamic pieces in the passing game as well. And Tom Heckert has allowed us to be able to have those more than we have had certainly since 2007, the last time we had what was really, by and large, considered a pretty potent offense around the NFL.
Absolutely, and today probably will not be the day that we get into the offensive line, but think about it. You got Joe Thomas, who's been anchoring the left side of that now. He's a 6-year, just perennial all-star anchor on the left side of that line. You have Alex Mack. We could have taken Mark Sanchez, but we traded and we got an all-pro center, and then we got Mitchell Schwartz. We probably won't talk about Mitchell Schwartz today, but that's supposed to be a pretty solid upgrade at the right tackle. And if you have some key components in the center and on both ends, you're looking at a really strong line, and you mix in a really good running back. You have totally changed how defenses can play you. And I know the knock on Colt McCoy was that, well, I don't know. There were so many knocks on him, like it was his fault that nobody was blocking, catching, or passing, or scheming, or anything else. But I really think that this is a team that is now primed for success. And while we might get to the offensive line more next week, I think in our limit...
Well, we're already talking about it now. Why don't we just go ahead and spend a couple minutes talking about them, and we can talk about the wide receivers as well. You've already mentioned 3 of the 5 offensive linemen.
All right, so, well, let's just kind of sum up what Joe Thomas has meant, because that blind side is such an important spot. He's 6 years in from Wisconsin, just every year in All-Pro. What does having an anchor like that, one of the best left tackles in the league, do for an entire offensive line?
Well, I think it just solidifies the group as a unit. It gives the quarterback more confidence. It's hard to say, though, Brian, just because of the simple fact that, we have supposedly had this all-pro left tackle, this tackle who many experts consider to be, if not one of the best left tackle in football.
Right.
And yet we're still bottom of the league in rushing every year, and bottom of the league in passing every year, bottom of the league in offense. So it's kind of a hard question to answer. I'll be interested to see how, if we have this excellent... What I will say is that supposedly a lot of the talk in Cleveland right now is the fact that the left side of the offensive line, it's going to be a lot of fun seeing Trent Richardson running behind Joe Thomas and the left guard, Jason Pinkston. And that's been a lot of talk right now that the two of them together have looked very solid, and there's a lot of preseason buzz that's going to be a nice combination. So it'll be interesting to see how the young guards, Pinkston and then Laval on the right side, how they continue to grow and develop. Pinkston was a true rookie last year. Laval, after missing much of his rookie season, was, for all intents and purposes, a rookie second-year player last year. And both were starters, and both played relatively well. You hope to see that continued growth. And you throw Mitchell Schwartz in there. Here's a name to think about as well at right tackle, O'Neal Cousins, who was picked up off of waivers from the Ravens last year, and started the first game or so for us before Pashos was able to come back. Didn't really show much, but a lot of the talk around training camp is actually that he's giving Mitchell Schwartz, who at least in the general pundits' view was looked upon as being handed the starting right tackle job. O'Neal Cousins has come in and said, hey, I'm still here too, and he's played very well. And that's a positional battle to definitely keep your eye on, to see who ends up starting opening day. Just because Mitchell Schwartz doesn't get in the starting lineup on opening day, which I still think he probably will, that doesn't necessarily mean he's not your long-term starter. But what it does mean is that he has the little bit of the learning curve that maybe O'Neal Cousins is certainly ahead of him on, because he's more of a veteran player. And O'Neal Cousins, a lot of people believe him to be one of the strongest and most nasty players on the team. I believe it was an interview with Trent Richardson about which of the offensive linemen you'd least want to get in a fight with, or something like that. And he certainly mentioned Joe Thomas. Just said that Joe Thomas's legs are just tree trunks basically, and but he said Big O'Neal Cousins, that's not a man that anyone on the team wants to mess with. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there on the offensive line this year. I think they'll be improved because of the fact that you have the young guards getting a chance to have a little bit more experience. Joe Thomas is going to be there as long as he stays healthy. The real question, and certainly Alex Mack, the center, is a Pro Bowl caliber player, if not necessarily always going to make it to the Pro Bowl because of some higher, some more notorious names that are going to end up going before he does. But it'll be interesting to see what happens.
We're talking with Brandon Odell about the Cleveland Browns, and I wanted to jump back to something you said, that the Browns had such a horrible offense, and what good does having the left tackle mean? Now, I will bring up that 2 years ago, when you had a motivated Peyton Hillis, that the rushing game was a lot different 2 years ago, and then right in the early days of Joe Thomas during the Derek Anderson years, that was a very potent offense for at least half the season as well. So it's kind of feast or famine with the last few years with the Browns, and trust me, last year was one of the worst offensive showings I have ever seen. I mean, we cut one of our starting wide receivers during the middle of the season. I mean, he's a starter. He beat out all the other guys, and then Brian Robisky just gets cut in the middle of the year. Like, goodbye. You're that bad. Well, how did you not figure that out during the draft, during the preseason? How do you just cut a guy during the? It was a disaster last year, and it really does seem like things are moving in the right direction. And with O'Neal Cousins, if this is a guy saying, "Hey, I know you drafted someone, but check it out. I'm actually really good, and I intend to play here this year." There is nothing wrong with having some depth on that offensive line. Look at the Eric Steinbach injury and how damaging that was last year.
Absolutely not. I certainly agree with you 100%. If you have O'Neal Cousins coming off the bench, people get injured, and it's good to know that you have an O'Neal Cousins, that you have a John Greco, that you have a Ryan Miller. I believe he was he a 6th-round pick of the Browns this year on offensive line. I believe he was coming out of Colorado.
Yeah, 6'7",
fifth-round pick.
Big boy.
Fifth-round pick.
Yeah, big boy.
And he's backing up everyone as well. And so it'll be the depth is encouraging. Let's keep everybody healthy and see where things go from there. Why don't we get into the receivers a little bit, Brian?
Absolutely. You think about the receivers, and for some reason now, I think receivers, I think dreadlocks. I don't know what. Maybe it's just the Josh Cribbs thing, but you said receivers, I thought dreadlocks now. So let's just talk about Josh Cribbs right off the top. 8 years in out of Kent State, had a few phenomenal years where he was just returning kickoffs and punt returns. The guy was just a human highlight reel. And then it seems like as he made the transition after he got his contract, they tried to convert him to get more touches as a wide receiver, and I don't know that it's been successful, or maybe this is exactly the type of learning curve that you would expect from a kid coming out of Kent State who is a special teams player, that it might take a few years to get up to speed and then maybe be a consistent, third down receiver or a number 3 receiver. What do you think about Josh Cribbs right now?
Well, all word from Berea is the fact that he is going to be having a far more limited role truly on offense, that they might have a couple of special packages for him, but that he's going to have a much more limited role on offense, and that they are going to put him back on all of the different return and coverage teams on special teams, and that is going to be really where his bread and butter is. Josh Cribbs has replied by saying that he'll do whatever he has to do to help the team win. Certainly sounds in some of his comments like he is a little disappointed But frankly speaking, they really liked what he is able to do on special teams more, and feels that overall he can contribute to the team more from that regard. And so we'll see what happens with him this year. But don't count on seeing too much of Josh Cribbs this year at receiver.
Now, so someone that kind of, I know this isn't technically a receiver, but at tight end, Jordan Cameron out of USC. This is another interesting name where it was a pretty high draft pick, didn't really see too much on the field last year. What do we think we're going to get out of this tight end position? Because, we re-signed some players. Some other players are getting older. Benjamin Watson. I'm just wondering, who is primed for a breakout? Are we hearing anything about Jordan Cameron out of USC?
Okay, first of all, just to dispel any rumors, Ben Watson has looked excellent in camp so far and does not look like he has slowed down at all. Evan Moore, who really, let's be honest, he was the preseason MVP last year.
Yeah, he looked great.
Everyone was really expecting a lot of big things out of him, and who knows, maybe he's one of those players that once teams start scheming for more in the regular season, his weaknesses are exposed a little bit more frequently. But he has been injured. I think actually yesterday was the first day that he actually was back on the practice field. And in his absence, Jordan Cameron has gotten a lot more of the snaps and really has shined and has come in stronger, has come in faster, really has come in with better technique, because Jordan Cameron was someone, we drafted him out of Southern California, but he was recruited as a power forward at BYU, and I believe came in maybe just for 1 year, maybe 2 years at USC, and so very limited time actually working offensively. So we'll see what happens with him. He certainly has looked very good. I think it's going to always have to do with the blocking aspect. You may be able to catch a football, you may be able to run patterns, but if you're a tight end, you need to be able to get in there and get your hands dirty as well. And so it remains to be seen if Jordan Cameron at 6'5", 245 is going to be able to really stand toe-to-toe with some of these larger defensive ends, linebackers in the NFL.
Yeah, I played in high school against a guy from Canton McKinley that was a tight end. He was 6'7", 285 in high school. And you think the NFL, these are really big boys in the middle, whether it's outside backer or defensive end that you got to make your plays against. And I guess who would you think would be the best all-around package? Say you're the coach, Brandon. What do you do? Do you give Evan Moore, Jordan Cameron, Benjamin Watson? What would you do with the tight end spot? Would you use certain players on certain downs? How would you handle that if you were in charge?
Well, I think the next few weeks will probably help to sort some of that stuff out. I think that if Evan Moore is healthy, I think that his size, which is he is 6'6", 250 versus Jordan Cameron, 6'5", 245, very similar size players. So I don't think that Jordan Cameron is going to be replacing Ben Watson. I think Watson's spot, as far as more of the traditional tight end set, I think is going to be pretty solid. I think it just remains to be seen if Jordan Cameron can show enough during the preseason to possibly make Evan Moore expendable altogether. Because although keep in mind, although Evan Moore did actually tie for the team lead with Josh Cribbs last year in touchdown receptions with 4. That still is only 4 touchdowns. It's not like there aren't other players in the league who can score 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's not Megatron numbers.
Yeah. So if Evan Moore doesn't really show much from what we're getting from Jordan Cameron, Evan Moore could possibly be on the chopping block. I would certainly say Dan Gronkowski, one of a late season pickup, who actually is the brother of Rob Gronkowski, the superstar in New England right now, superstar tight end. Dan Gronkowski doesn't have anywhere near the talent that his brother does, but is on the roster as well. I would say that he's probably the first name that you'll see on the chopping block. Then you have Alex Smith, who in a lot of ways people think is the most underrated of all of the tight ends, who really does both things well. You're passing or you're running routes and catching the football and actually blocking. I think Alex Smith's job is going to be safe as well because of the fact that he can get in there on those double tight situations and be a better run blocker. So I think Benjamin Watson, Alex Smith, those two are going to be on the team no matter what. I think that Dan Gronkowski probably is going to be maybe given a spot on the practice squad if he even gets that far. And then Jordan Cameron, because the fact the Browns really like him, he's going to be on the team regardless. It's just a matter of whether they keep 3 tight ends or 4. And then also consider Brad Smelly, who was really drafted as kind of an H-back, tight end, fullback type of player. Whose spot does he take? Does he take Owen Marisic's spot? Does he take one of the tight end spots? So these are all things that really are going to just have to be worked out in the next couple of weeks.
Well, you know, you talk about the things that we have to work out here, and we bring in Josh Gordon. We basically got him a year early. We drafted him in the 2nd round next year. And how are his workouts coming along? Because, you know, you heard about all the off-field problems with the kid. Wondering if he has his head screwed on straight, if he's going to be a problem, if he's going to be a disappointment and just, you know, be one of those suspended problematic players. How is he looking out there?
Physically, he is a specimen. Everything that we have heard from him or from his work in Berea so far has been nothing but positive. He's kept his head down, or his nose down, I should say, has done his work, has been very coachable. Certainly has made some mistakes, but the raw talent is there. He has been going one-on-one with Joe Hayden in practice a lot. And just think about the two of them just making each other better. Just think about how much of a better receiver Josh Gordon is going to be from being able to go up against if not a top 5 corner in the NFL, certainly a top 10 corner in the NFL in Joe Hayden. That's only going to help his progress. That's
a really good point you're making, because I was watching the NFL Network, and by the way, the NFL Network's doing some really good stuff. I don't know if you get that out there, but it's really nice, just nonstop, nothing but football. And I was watching Deshaun Jackson with the Eagles talking about how he's going up, you know, up against the corners and all the defensive backs that they have brought in over there in Philadelphia. And he said, you know, we're making the defensive backs better, and they're making us better. And you know, normally you're supposed to say stuff like that in camp, but, you know, when you got Nnamdi Asomugha back there and you're really pushing each other, like you said, Joe Hayden, that's a good practice partner to get better. You know, you want to run sharp routes and you want to really figure out how to do well. You know, practice against the best. And people keep saying, well, the Browns, they're in a tough division. Well, good. Good. I'm glad they're in a tough division. I don't want, you know, like an American League Central or, you know, I don't want a really weak division. I want a tough division where you got to earn your way out of it, and by playing some of the best, you should elevate your game instead of playing down to the level of some inferior competition. I'm okay with that. You just got to step it up.
Wholeheartedly agree with you there. Wholeheartedly agree. And just think about how much better Joe Hayden, who is certainly still peaking and coming into his prime, he is going to be from going up against such a tall, powerful receiver in Josh Gordon, who the Browns really haven't had since he's been here on the team.
That is true. What do you see Greg Little? How do you see him fitting in? Obviously, you know, a conversion. You know, played some running back. Now he's 2 years in, coming in from North Carolina. He had off the field problems. He was part of some stuff. I don't know, whatever. But it was another one of those roll the dice kind of picks on some talent. How is he looking out there so far?
He's lost a little weight. He looks a lot leaner, has more of a wide receiver's body rather than a running back's body. I mean, still has his size, which is a little bit larger than some of the other wide receivers in the NFL. He's still a bigger wide receiver, but has really developed an all-around. I'm trying to think of the right word. He has devoted himself to his craft in many different respects, not just on the football field, but off the football field, watching what he's eating, controlling that side of things a little bit more, and it's hopefully added a little bit of speed to his game and maybe a little bit more agility as well. They've actually been running him out of the slot a little bit more with some sets where you have Mohamed Massaquoi, who really remains to be seen what his role is going to be with the team. He's had a pretty solid camp so far, everyone is saying. Josh Gordon then on the other side, and along with Greg Little. I'll tell you get Greg Little in the slot and Josh Gordon lined up next to him, there's some good things that can happen with that duo. Certainly, I mean, this is still the preseason. We haven't even had a preseason game yet, but people are getting excited, and people are also getting excited. I'm sorry, I do have to leave here in a few minutes. But I want to give you a name that we've heard a little bit about through the draft, but Travis Benjamin. Everyone is saying that Travis Benjamin has shown the most improvement from rookie minicamp to actual training camp of any of the rookies, and that's including Brandon Weeden and Trent Richardson.
And you know what else he's shown us? He's also shown us dreadlocks.
He's shown us the ability to get confused with Josh Cribbs, Dimitri Patterson, who else? Trent Richardson, obviously. You know, there's a few of them there. So, but yeah, Travis Benjamin has there's things to be excited about with the wide receivers right now, and people are legitimately saying that when you know, we haven't really had a chance to be able to say that for the last few years. People are legitimately saying that this could end up being an emerging group. So we'll see what happens.
And you know what? If Colt McCoy is able to earn a slot, if Weeden doesn't quite grasp it all fast enough, and if Colt McCoy is sharp, you're saying 3 years in with actually a little bit better blocking, a running back that can run it, and some receivers that can catch it, and a little bit of time to plan an off season, you know, if Colt McCoy gets the system, he can be very effective hitting all these players. And if Weeden earns the spot, he's a gunslinger. You know, he could really rifle a lot of this stuff. You know, you could see a completely different offense here. And it all starts with the running back because the line – I'm actually excited for this team. I know you got to run here, so let me just here's what I want to do. I just want to bounce a couple names off you. Just give me the first thing off the top of your head. I'm just going to round out the rest of the wide receivers, and we'll let you get going here. We already talked about Josh Cooper. We talked about Travis Benjamin.
We didn't. We talked about Josh Gordon. We didn't talk about Josh Cooper.
Excuse me, Josh Gordon. What's Josh Cooper bringing to the table? Because he knows Brandon Weeden really well.
Josh Cooper and Jordan Norwood, I think, are the two players that are kind of interchangeable in this offense. They're both kind of those shifty, smaller receivers, you know, a la what you would hope to eventually have, a Wes Welker-ish type of player. You know, that's what you're going to get from your Josh Coopers and Jordan Norwoods. Chances are it's looking like Josh Cooper might be the one to end up taking that spot. I've been hearing his name a few more times than I've heard Jordan Norwood's name. That's not to say he's having a bad camp, but that's just showing how much Cooper has really stood out so far.
And how important is the chemistry with Weeden?
I mean, I would say it's hugely important, but I think Weeden, his job right now is to develop chemistry with his number ones and number twos, not worrying so much about developing chemistry with a guy who may make the practice squad.
That is true. What do you think, Massaquoi? Like you said, it's up in the air with him, but he's been solid so far. Do you see him having a bit of a breakout season in his fourth year out of Georgia?
I think it all depends on the injury issues. That's always been his biggest concern, certainly with the concussions. We all know about the hit that he had from James Harrison, but there have been plenty of other injury issues there as well. And, I mean, he's never even gotten over more than 39 receptions in any of his 3 seasons so far. I mean, you talk about Greg Little. He had 61 last year, so you just look at that for what it's worth and say, well, if Mohamed Massaquoi was basically supposed to be the number one wide receiver the last few years, and he hasn't even gotten, has barely gotten more than half of the receptions that Greg Little, a guy who had played, hadn't played NFL or football for 18 months, was able to get that many more. Might be saying something there. So Mohamed Massaquoi certainly could end up being on the cutting room floor. But you know what? I mean, if he plays solid and he shows that he has worth to the team, Brandon Weeden might be able to bring out the best in him.
Good point. And then Jordan Norwood out of Penn State, you briefly touched on him, that he's probably going to be one of those bubble players. Either it's practice squad or you might be waiting for an injury or waiting to jump in somewhere. Is that pretty much what we're expecting out of Jordan Norwood?
I would say so. He's a shifty player. He has some good movement in his hips and things like that, but he's not a physically dominant receiver who's really going to wow you.
Gotcha. Well, I know that you got to get running, so we will let you go. This is Brandon Odell joining us on Strictly Browns, as we try to do every Friday. We know it's getting real close for you. New daddy. New father, Mr. Odell. So we'll keep doing these shows as long as something hasn't drastically changed, and we wish you all the best there.
Let us hope that something has dramatically and drastically changed in the next 48 hours here.
Wow, 2 days, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the due date is tomorrow, so it's definitely it's about that time. So. We'll try to do it regardless of things drastically changing, trying to find some time to be able to sit down and talk some Browns. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, we appreciate it as always. Go do what you got to do. Best wishes to you and yours, all right? We'll talk again next week.
Go Browns.
Go Browns. You are watching The New American Media.